will call this meeting to order. And if there's time at the end, if you want to talk, you can. Now, we are live streaming now, David, I believe.
I believe we are. Sean, could you please confirm that we are live?
Yeah, we are live.
We're good? Okay, very good. Okay, so call the meeting to order, and I would like to welcome everybody here to the November 30th, and it is November 30th. It's hard to believe that we're at the end of November already, but welcome to this meeting. It is, as anybody watching at home, it is being broadcast on the YouTube Perth County site. So the first item that I have here is a statement that I'll read, and as participants enter, the Secretary Treasurer will acknowledge and remind to keep mics muted. Also remind to wait 2 seconds after unmuting to speak. At 9:20, the Secretary will announce, and this has all happened, that the hearing will begin, and he has done that. And then when we go live, we can proceed. So I'll call the hearing to order, and would like to thank everybody for in attendance here today. I would like to make a note that what will be shown on the screen for those viewing at home is our remote meeting platform, whereby whoever is speaking will be shown predominantly, with smaller images of the members and staff attending along the edge of the screen. The agenda for the meeting hearing has been posted online at perthcounty.ca. If you want to follow along, please feel free to access it now. I will remind all committee members, staff, and any others participating in the meeting to please mute your microphones when not in use to reduce the feedback. As this meeting is being held remotely, there are some procedural changes regarding how the committee will vote. The Secretary Treasurer will call each of the members' name, and each member will respond if they are in favor or opposed to a motion, and I will announce the result of the vote. Before we proceed, I would like to ask the Secretary Treasurer to confirm the attendance of committee members by roll call.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just begin by calling out for attendance of the meeting. Just when you hear your name called, please respond present, and we'll note that for the record for this meeting. So Councillor Aitchison.
Here.
Councillor Eggets.
Present.
Councillor Hurlick.
Present.
Councillor Hurlick, could you repeat it? Kind of got cut off there.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor McKenzie.
Present.
And Councillor Duncan, I don't believe is in attendance today.
Okay, I haven't seen him on. I never got an email from him, but I don't see him on here, so we'll assume that. So the first item then, business to deal with, is confirmation of the agenda. And I would take a mover and seconder to accept and confirm the agenda as it was sent out. Moved by Councillor Aggett, second by Warden Aitchison. And I guess I turn it over to David to take a vote.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aitchison, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Eggets, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Councillor McKenzie, how do you vote?
Yes, so the results of that vote is that it's carried. Next item up is disclosure of pecuniary interest, and I don't know if anybody has anything to note at this time. If you do, I can note it now or make note of it as we go along. Item 3 is item 4 rather, is the adoption of the minutes from November the 2nd. And I would ask for a mover and seconder to adopt those minutes at this time. Moved by Warden Aitchison and seconded by Councillor Eggets. Any questions in those minutes? I think they're straightforward. Okay, David, I'll ask you to take the vote then on that.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aitchison, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Eggetts, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Councillor McKenzie, how do you vote?
Yes, so that has been carried as well. The hearing of applications for consent, I don't believe that we have any that we are dealing with directly this morning. So that brings us down to reports. And first item then is new, pending, in process, final approved, withdrawn, and delegated authority approved applications. So I'll turn it over to you, David, again.
Thank you, Chair. So just for the committee's information, since our last meeting on November 2nd, we have 6 new applications that have been received, and they're bundled into 3 different groups. So we have application B51, 52, and 53-20 concern the same property in municipality of West Perth and Broadhaven. We have a pair of applications for a residential property in Millbank. That's applications B54 and B55-20. And the 6th application that we've received since our last meeting is application B56, which is for a surplus farm dwelling severance proposed in Fullerton Ward of municipality of West Perth. We have 5 applications that are pending. So these are applications that have either been deemed not to be complete or are awaiting further justification materials from their respective applicants. So there's 5 under that category. We have 11 applications which are currently in process. So these are applications which have been deemed complete, as well as applications which have been circulated to the public, but for which no final decision has yet been made. So there are 11 under that category. Since November 2nd, we have 3 applications that have been final approved. So those are applications for which staff have issued a certificate of official for, and all conditions have been complete. And since our last meeting on November 2nd, we have 6 applications for consent, which have been approved through the delegated approval authority under bylaw 3761-2020. And those applications have each been summarized as to their purpose and effect under our report starting on page 11 of the agenda. So that is a summary of our report concerning a new, pending, withdrawn, final approved, and delegated authority approved applications, as well as in process applications. I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of the committee may have regarding that report or the contents thereof. And I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, thank you, David. Are there any questions with any of that information that David presented? No, looks like everything is good. It's certainly, we're certainly dealing with a number of applications, certainly more than what would be normal, I guess. And we're dealing with them in a fairly speedy manner, I think. So should meet the approval of people out there, I think. So we're providing a service and we're providing it quickly. Next item then is the correspondence. Oh,
through the chair, we do need a motion to accept.
Oh,
that
sorry.
report. Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yep. Okay. Daryl has a question maybe first though.
Yes, I do. The Fern application in Southeast Oak Ward, where's that one under again? I temporarily lost it.
Through the chair, if you just give me a moment, Councillor Hurlick.
I had it there and I lost it, and I'm trying to open everything up there.
I believe it's in the pending as that on the date that report was written.
Yeah. Are we?
Yes.
No, that's coming.
Sorry, so through the chair, Councillor Hurlick, the application for Farron, that's application B30-20. It's on page 7 of the agenda. It's listed as the first application under in process. So it is an application that has been deemed complete. There has been circulation requests for comments, I believe, on that application, but there is a recommendation to approve that's been received from Perth East Council at this point. However, it is pending review for potential delegated authority approval at this point.
Go ahead, Daryl.
You can hear me there, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, anyways, so there was comment on that one. If you look at the pictures there on the north side of that property, there was quite a big, long extra chunk added to it. And there was concerns with that one. And I'm surprised that the comments didn't make it across. I guess they didn't make it across is because it got passed, but there was a couple for sure naysayers in that one. And so this is the issues we're getting into. There's about 50 to 80 feet, the whole length of that property extra there just because of a very small tree line that should, in my mind, stay with the farm. And I'm just a little concerned there. So, yeah.
Sally, want to make a comment here?
I did some further review on that one, and I did watch the YouTube video from your local council because the planners were working through the questions that were raised, and we received further confirmation and sketches from the geothermal installer that is also the location of the main for the geothermal system. So it is in that vicinity as well, which is it was in the report actually that came to the local council as well, that's part of the reason that lot line was established or proposed to be established where it is. And it's good, I think, to probably talk a little bit about the resolution at local council. So when I receive those applications, and I'm looking at your resolutions, there was no additional comment in there about anything unresolved. And I think for us to go back and question that resolution is it somehow disrespects the voice of that council. So I think it is an important conversation maybe to have at all local councils about when there is things that you feel are unresolved or that you want to be further discussed by land division committee, that becomes part of the resolution. When I receive them, I'm looking for the opinion of that council that speaks as one voice through the resolution. I'm also looking for unresolved concerns from the public. And I'm looking for, and I also dig in on a second round to ensure that the planning rationale is sound. So those three check boxes in that particular application are checked. The resolution is from the local is to approve. There's nothing from the public that has been unresolved, and the planning rationale, as we've gone through it several times, is sound, or something that we could be confident in a hearing that we could justify and stand behind. So that one is up for delegated approval authority, and all the boxes are checked. So my duty at this point is to fulfill the rest of I'm not reviewing the application from any other standpoint than a planning one, and it meets all the requirements for an undisputed approval.
Okay, thanks, Sally. And I guess, from many point of view, we have to take it that when the local municipality is in favor of it and approves it, that, as Sally said, that's kind of a checkbox that we look at. If there was some issues, it should have been identified when that came forward. But anyways, Daryl, go ahead.
So it's interesting. So here's the issue conversation as well. One for sure.
Okay, Daryl, we can't hear anything you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
It's kind of muffled. We'll try it.
These are the issues we run into. There's people past it and just said, let land division figure it out. So thank you. We will have to work on this.
Okay. And I guess, you know, sometimes if there is issues, even if the municipality does pass it, you can make land division aware of some concerns that have been come up at the meeting. But anyways, I think Sally's explanation of it is probably a fair assessment of how it was dealt with. Anybody else? Okay, and as Dave reminded me, we need a motion to adopt that report. So moved by Warden Aitchison. We have a seconder for that. Councillor Agats. Any further discussion? Okay, David, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Aitchison, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick, how do you vote? Councillor Hurlick, can you repeat? It was a little faint there.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Agats, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Councillor McKenzie, how do you vote?
Yes. So the results of that vote is it was carried unanimously by members that were here. Okay, any correspondence, David?
Through the chair, no correspondence of note for the committee at this point.
Okay, thank you. And appeals, I assume that they're very similar to what they were at our previous meeting, other than there's maybe a date, I believe, for one of the appeals.
Through the chair, my apologies, our bullet list was absent from the agenda page, but as per our last meeting, we have two outstanding appeals for consent files at this point. It was B6719 for Sylvestrin, and then I can't recall the application number, but it was the consent for Miss Wilson in Perth East as well. I don't have any specific updates on either at this point, unless our manager of planning can say otherwise. I don't have anything direct to report on either to the committee at this point. So,
Anything, Sally?
Yes, there has been a date set for the Sylvestrin to be heard. They're setting aside 2 days, and I will. I was just going to do a quick search here. That came out last week, and I believe it's in the spring.
February 18th is the hearing for the OMB on the other property that Anderson owns. And it was my understanding that they were going to deal with this particular issue at the same time, but maybe that was wishful thinking. I don't know, Sally.
I just have it here. Let me pull it up for you. Tuesday, March the 2nd.
Okay, so it's a separate date then. When I was talking to Steve, I'm sure he said February the 18th was the date that he had, and he did indicate that he thought they would be at the same time. But anyways, that's okay. No problem. Okay, in other business, 9.1, we have a request to amend conditions of consent for application for consent to sever B70 by Monteith, Ritzma, and Phillips. And I will turn that over to Dave, I guess, as well, to explain that situation.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, just for members of committee. So what is before you today is a request for changing conditions to application B7019 by Monteith, Ritzma, Phillips on behalf of Timmermans Farms Limited. This is for an application for consent in the Ellis Ward of the Township of Perth East. It's for a surplus farm severance that was originally granted conditional approval by the committee on July 2nd, 2020. The applicants in this case are asking for a change to one of the 12 conditions, being condition number 10. They've requested that condition 10 be altered such that an undertaking from a solicitor be received stating that the retained parcel be sold to a different farm, consolidating farm operation, being Deloyer Farms Limited. They have demonstrated through the documentation received at our office that Deloyer Farms Limited indeed qualifies as a consolidating farm operation to which the dwelling on the subject property located at 4129 Road 130 can be indeed deemed surplus to. We have reviewed the request, and we found that the request does meet all criteria of the County of Perth official plan policy that pertains to the severance of surplus farm dwellings. Staff have reviewed the request and see no issue that the change be granted. So that is essentially the summary of what's being asked for here. And I would turn it over to the committee if members have any questions regarding the request. And we would need a motion to consider the request. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for David on that? Okay. Then we do need a motion. And I don't have the recommendation in front of me, David. Do you have a written motion there to deal with this one?
I do, and I can read it out if that's okay with you, Chair.
No, that's fine. Yes.
Okay. So I'll read the motion for the committee. So the recommended action is that County of Perth Land Division Committee approve the request to amend conditions of consent for application for consent to sever by Monteith Ritzman Phillips Professional Corporation, care of Andrew Phillips, on behalf of Timmermans Farms Limited, application number B70-19 for property described as part of Lot 15, Concession 2, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, 4129 Road 130, and that the new conditions shall be as follows. I will only state that the recommended change to condition is with respect to condition number 10, which reads that an undertaking from a solicitor be received stating that the retained parcel be sold to the proposed buyer, Deloyer Farms Limited, as it is surplus to the needs of that farm operation. The remaining 11 conditions will remain as previously approved by the committee on July 2nd, 2020. So that is the recommended action as per what's stated in our report.
Okay, thanks, David. Any questions, further questions with regards to that? Okay, so what we need is a motion, and we need a mover and seconder to address that motion. So again, moved by Warden Aitchison. We have a seconder for that. Councillor Herlick. And David, I'll turn it over to you to take the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aitchison, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Herlick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Eggets, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Councillor McKenzie, how do you vote?
Yes. So the results of that vote is that that motion is carried. 9.2, delegated approval authority. Anything there, Dave?
Through the chair, I'm going to hand it over to our manager of planning, Sally McMullen. We wanted to, Sally's present today with us, and we had portioned a part under other business for her to discuss the delegated approval authority process. So I'll hand it over to Sally at this point.
Okay, thank you, David, and through you to the committee. It's been a few months now that we've had delegated approval authorities in process. And so I wanted to check in essentially and just go over the basics of the process itself and a few reflections that we've had now that it's been operational for a few months. So as you'll recall, the process begins when an application is received and deemed complete. We get it circulating right then, and that's different from the way we used to do it, in that we would combine a notice of application with a notice of hearing for a land division committee. So the neighbors of the application and the sign being posted and the notice being put on the Perth County website would have occurred much later in the process. So that's happening now. Once it's deemed complete, we start putting that notice together and get it out. And we had some kinks to work out in that process, and we think we've got that pretty well smoothed now. So those applications are being circulated quite a bit earlier than in the past with a different system. So that is a really important part of the process, because of course it leads us to indicators as to whether or not there are concerns from the public that need to be resolved. And what we have found is that there have been calls made or letters written in to us about applications, and the planner and the applicant have been able to get involved or engage in conversation with those folks through the process, rather than just like arriving at the hearing to have those conversations. And they've been able to resolve the questions or answer the questions. And so that has been a byproduct of the process of change and those notices going out earlier. So when that notice goes out, then is when the planner starts their review, and they start having more conversations with the applicants. And I think one of our other reflections is that applicants and planners seem to be working together earlier. So at the, not just at the pre-council stage, but earlier in the process, like through the review that the planner is doing, and sorting through a lot of the things that would have come about as not meeting criteria, or the property being too big, or what have you. So the planners are working hard through some of that stuff, but also the applicants generally seem to want to submit something that is supportable. So I think that this additional communication has brought us to a point where applicants are trying to get as close to that criteria as possible. And it has, I think, perhaps resulted in less hearings. So the other thing then is that those two things are happening before the applicant and before the planner presents to the local municipality. So we generally have a sense of the public's response already at that stage, rather than that still being in process. Because I think it used to sort of coincide with, as the planner was arriving at the local council, those circulations were just either just beginning or had just started. So now we are coming to you once those are nearing an end. And so a lot of that stuff, your councils are now privy to too, if there was concerns, what they were and that sort of thing. So then applications that have been through that public scrutiny and have been to the local municipality, then of course they're ready for either land division or an undisputed approval process, as the case may be. But it does, and I'm glad you brought up that example, Daryl, because it does really resonate the importance of like a resolution at the local. That's really the local municipality's opportunity to have impact and to really give the local expertise and knowledge to the application, that and to give a sense that, you know, to direct how you want these to look in your municipality. So I would suggest maybe that a resolution could, like in that instance, if we were to use the example, that you could add to your resolution of support. You could say generally supportive through this resolution, and these outlier pieces of information could need to be resolved. So your resolution could be conditional upon those things being resolved through land division committee. So that's one option. But I do think there is such a significance put onto your local resolutions, especially when there's an undisputed potential. So it really does check a box when it's supportive with no other comments. So I think, you know, it's kind of good timing that you brought that up. I did want to do a bit of a check-in anyways on this, and it is just a reminder to all of us that those resolutions are really important. And if there's anything else that you want to say, or any conditions that you want to put, or it could just be that you want land division committee to look at this one more, that could be part of the resolution. And I think too, deferrals is another thing that can happen at the local municipality. And I also I also think, you know, deferrals are really something to maybe reserve for when there's something specific that you think is missing from the story that you need to know before you can really make a judgment for your local municipality. And that it's something that is measurable or that can be brought back to you. So that is a specific thing that your council is looking for. Deferrals, as we all know, add a lot of time to a process. And if we are adding time at the local for specific information, then of course that's really valuable time, and should be taken to do that. And then if there's needing more time for thought, I guess, then there's probably more conversation that needs to happen to figure out what it is that's really at the root of why the local municipality might not be ready to make a resolution. So just again, pointing out the importance of those resolutions, whether they be for approvals with stipulations, conditions, or just simply the request that something gets more scrutiny. And also to be using deferrals really for specific information that can be brought back to you. And at that local level. And then when we bring those applications, you know, on through the process up to the land division committee, then you guys have more information to work with to specific outliers or specific questions that the local is asking you to address in your committee. So yeah, I just wanted to check in, see if any of you had questions. I know we haven't had hearings lately and I was unable to come to the last meeting. So I wanted to be able to bring you this, just a bit of a summary of how it's been going so far from our perspective, and see if there was things that you wanted to add to that conversation.
Okay, so thanks, Sally. Any questions for Sally? Ward Nathan?
Okay, not so much a question, but a couple comments. I think this process has actually been a great addition to what we're doing. It has speeded up the process for a lot of the people that are uncontested, because not all severances are contested, and we're seeing that here. And a comment to the deferral side. So we did have two at our last council meeting. You'll have seen it in the package. They were both deferred. And the reason they were deferred was the application was far too large. One was 3.51 acres, another was 2.4, 2.6 acres. And David can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the figures for the size. And my comment there was, you know, if you want to make a motion to put that through, for all intents and purposes, that's not going to be supported by land division. So what the applicant is doing, and through the planners and whatnot, are having conversations to reduce those sizes before it blows up, comes to land division, and either gets deferred or defeated. So that was the idea why we deferred those two. But the truth is, the onus is far more on the lower tier to come up with a solid resolution. So it's very clear as to what you're looking and seeking.
Okay, very good, Jim. Question, Darrell? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well explained, and it's as I thought as well. And Rhonda and I will make sure we get this back. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we're getting near the end, so I'm going to bring this up, and I know David and Sally and I have talked about this, and there's two ways of looking at this thing, and Sally knows where I'm going to go now. When we get an application for a surplus severance, one of the conditions is that it is habitable, and usually there is, you know, there's no question. You can drive by and you see there's people living in there and that. In a case where you're not sure, I assume that we justify this by an inspection from the building inspector. Do we not, Sally or Dave, whoever wants to take a swipe at that one?
Yeah, habitability is a part of the definition in the provincial policy statement. So for us, it really is a matter of eligibility. And if a person wants to make a home habitable, if it's not habitable and they want to go to the effort of making it habitable in order to go through the process, that's their prerogative, and we encourage folks to do so. But we do rely on the site visit to consider and local knowledge, certainly, to figure out if something requires further scrutiny. And what we would do in that case is make a condition that, like, we kind of have two choices. We can make the applicant go through the process of getting the building official out to deem it habitable before the review is completed. And then the question is answered and they move forward, or else we make it a condition of the application. So if there is a question of habitability, then a condition is drawn up that says, you know, that certificate or that acknowledgement from the building official must be provided as part of the final approval process. And there was one recently, Councillor McKenzie, that you that was brought up as being had a hole in the roof, I believe. And so we actually conducted a second site visit on that one. And there was a house, two houses in the same ownership in the same vicinity, one with a hole in the roof, one without. And so we have documented those photos, and the second site visit is documented through a number of emails back and forth here with the planner. And we had, when the question was raised, we put that condition in about habitability being confirmed through the building official. And then on the second site visit, our correspondence shows that we made the conclusion that the house that was of the subject of the application was in fact not the one with the hole in the roof, and didn't therefore have some question of habitability, and that it was being confused with the other house. So when I looked back into this one, that's the line of evaluation. And so that condition then was removed. And then that application went through the process. It's been conditionally approved. They're working through conditions. And the question was raised again, is this one habitable? And so now it makes me wonder if this one perhaps did slip through, or if this confusion with the neighboring house is in fact, like, which one of these houses was the one being, you know, considered inhabitable. So, you know, it doesn't make me feel very good, because this is a really important criteria for me. And I really believe strongly, and it's part of policy that a house must be habitable before it's considered eligible for this process. So it's unsettling that there was confusion around the house, and I still will need to investigate further to see if the one in question was the one that was considered inhabitable by neighbors or not, because there was two houses, and one of them seemed to be much better repair than the other.
Okay.
And
No,
it's also upsetting to think that that people would apply knowing that their house is inhabitable.
well, I think the thing where, and I guess, you know, this is where I'm coming from, it's a bit of a slippery slope. If the house is a little iffy, whether it's habitable or not, and the fact remains, you know, that it gets severed, and then a year later they tear it down and build a new house. From the municipality's point of view, it's probably a win-win situation, because they've got a new house with you know, more taxes and what have you. But it's not a big jump to go from that to a derelict house that you know isn't habitable, and get it severed and tear it down and build a new house too. So, you know, I guess that's the thing we have to be really cautious of. And on that note, like we do have a house in West Perth that people haven't lived in it for a long, long time. It's a stone house, and the person that's interested in it is spending money on fixing it up to make it habitable. And then that one will be coming down the road some point for us to deal with in a severance. But they've done that at their own expense, and they just fell in love with this stone house and are fixing it up to make it that it'll be livable and be able to be severed. So yeah, I just raised that because well, mainly because we had a bit of time here to spare. So, okay. Oh, Rhonda has a question, and Jim. So, Rhonda first.
Well, not a question, just maybe of a comment. Like I've been thinking about that too. So Sally just said it, the provincial policy states it, but why? You know, if you've got someone who wants to sever off a spot, build a new house, what's the difference if the old house is habitable or are they, you know, because even if it is declared habitable, and I know where the one is that they, Jim told me about it the other day. We declared it habitable. They severed it up. They ripped the habitable house down and they're building a new one. So why does it have to be habitable? Because they can rip it down whether it is or not. So why not let the ones that there's some out there that there are not habitable? Why not see if we can get a amendment to the provincial policy statement and let those be severed off too, and let them build a new house, and it is like a win-win situation for the municipalities.
I don't want to make a comment, Sally.
Yeah, the fact that it's in the definition really for us is a hard line. It needs to be habitable in order for it to be eligible. Now, why is that important? I would suggest that it's because the premise of fragmenting, allowing any fragmenting of the prime agricultural lands would be that there is a good reason, and the reason being to preserve existing housing stock. So to continue on an existing use, to continue on with infrastructure that's already there. So the quality of that infrastructure, or the fact that it's been maintained over a period of time, or whether or not someone's lived in there. I mean, I bought a farm that hadn't been lived in permanently for 20 years, and it was still quite a habitable house. But that there is that checks and balance that severing surplus dwellings has become a policy and a possibility, despite there being some negative outcomes for agriculture and farming in general. So that there's a trade-off that's acceptable to the point where there is a good reason, that there's existing housing stock that's worth preserving and putting to good use. So I think that's the basis for the reason why habitable is in that definition, and why it does become a hard line. And there's two things that kind of come out of that. One, someone could fix a house up minimally or to a minimum point of habitable in order to go through this process. And two, that once a house is severed and it's in different ownership, then the prerogative for that person to tear it down, whether it's a good house or not a great house, exists. And so once it's gone through the process and that lot's created, they can really do what they want in terms of building new or not.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Do you actually get a report from the building inspector when, you know, if it's one of these iffy houses?
I would if we asked for it. Building officials are well versed in like the surplus farm dwelling criteria, and if we made it a condition, or we, as part of the application upfront or as a condition, it's the applicant's responsibility to go and do the legwork on that. And so whether we make them do that upfront or as a condition, both work, and the CBOs are definitely willing to do it. And then the question is, well, when do we apply it? And certainly it's when there's the habitability of a place is in question. And that comes from the site visit or from local knowledge that that's brought to our attention.
Right. Okay, good.
And in
Thank you.
this, the one case that I'm thinking of, there was essentially a decoy that threw us off.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Jim, you had a comment or question?
Actually, a couple comments just with regards to the last conversation. I think the key to this whole thing is whether it's habitable or not. Is that flyer in there, the outliner in the provincial policy statement that kind of says that. And I don't think you want to go against that really too far. We did kind of once, and I think one of them is listed on your appeals section. So you got to be careful with exactly what you're going to do there. And back to Rhonda's comment. So the house that she was referring to that I'd mentioned to her was actually just down the road from me, corner of line 20 and road 130. And it was a lovely, lovely brick home that a lot of people would love to own. And I know all of a sudden after the severance went through, I was getting calls saying, "What's going on? They're tearing the house down." I said, "I have no idea. I don't own the house." But they actually did rip it down and they're building a new house, and there've been people in it forever. And lots of people would have loved to have lived in that house. It's actually a family member that's building the new house. So I guess maybe they're going to go more energy efficient. I'm not sure what the thinking is, but it was definitely a habitable house. And I got one actually little piece to bring up, and it's more of a new business item, and I missed that earlier. I apologize. So I did actually get a chance to scout my Western Ontario farmer last Saturday. And there was an article in there how Huron County has abandoned the fight on a number of animals in barns on severed properties. And Walter, you shook your head. I'm thinking you read the same thing.
Yeah, I did. Yes, I saw it.
So I was just wondering perhaps, and I don't want to give Sally any more work, but maybe she might want to just check into what the thinking is on that, or one of the planners, and because that really does open up a big can of worms, possibly.
Yeah.
Sally?
Yep, go ahead, Sally.
Okay, yeah, I can comment on that now. So Huron County is in the throes of a difficult situation where their surplus farm dwelling severances are when they're approved, they go through a zoning process or a rezoning, just like we do in Perth County, and that rezoning is called agriculture zone. It's ag small holding AG4, and within the permitted uses in that AG4 zone is keeping up to 4 nutrient units, and there's no prescription on where those nutrient units are kept, so they could be in an existing barn or what have you. And what the ministry has said now is the ability of a municipality to limit nutrient units or limit livestock held on a property in an agricultural zone, in an agricultural designation, is superseded by the Nutrient Management Act, so that the municipality doesn't have any authority to limit a livestock operation. And they're relying on that agricultural zone, that those properties are, to their mind, deemed agriculture. And so Huron County went through a process of awareness and education throughout all the lower tiers and the county council, and there was limited uptake in the desire to change the zone, change the name of the zone, try to resolve the situation. And so right now over there it's status quo. And so the potential there is to challenge the limiting of livestock on a property that was created through surplus farm dwelling severance. Now, the crux of the matter from my perspective is that those properties were created through a policy that only allowed them to exist because they were going to be residential. So it's the surplus it's the severance of a surplus dwelling, and that in the language of that policy, it says a minimum size required for that residential use. So it really comes down to a residential use, and that's the whole reason those properties were even allowed to be created in the first place. So they were never intended to be hobby farms or small farms or farm operations or livestock operations rather. So it is a catch-22 in that now those properties were created for the purpose of becoming residential. They were permitted to have some animals, seemed like a reasonable thing to do in the countryside where that was limited to something, you know, of a specific scale, and the compatibility issues are not what they would be if you wanted to keep animals in town, and so on. So unfortunately, it's created a real problem for that zone and that use in Huron County, that the province is saying, well, you can't limit livestock on these properties. And from a planning perspective, you would say, well, they're not farms. They were never meant to be farms. And then the province says, well, they have an agriculture zoning and they're in the agriculture designation. So the question becomes, how do we term these properties? How do we treat these properties? So that the implication is never that they are farm or that they are small farms, that they are truly residential. And there are other setbacks or connotations to calling them something other than, like, to designate them something other than agriculture in your official plan. And every time someone goes through a surplus farm dwelling severance, do we want them to have to do official plan amendment too, to change the designation of that little property? So that it's not all in an avenue to let them be able to keep some animals without someone pushing those boundaries and trying to set up a livestock operation on these lots. So it's a real catch-22. And in our amendment, we have proposed a limitation. We've proposed keeping animals with a limited size. So not limiting a number of animals, and in fact, limiting it so much that you couldn't really keep many animals, or certain animals of a certain size or type even, perhaps. So I have put up our amendment to the ministry too and said, do you think this is the same situation? Do you have the same concerns about this? And they're working through their answer, and they haven't fully responded as yet, but we did have a really great conversation about, like, the whole foundation of this is that these properties are created, they're eligible to be created because they are not going to be farms. So then how do you then have your cake and eat it too, to apply the Nutrient Management Act to them to supersede local bylaws? So we had a good conversation about it, and I'm looking forward to them providing me something in writing.
Very good. Thanks, Sally. Any other questions? Yeah, it was good. Good feedback and good conversations on issues. There's no motion required for what we've just done there. There's no closed session meeting, I don't believe, from anything that I've seen. The next item then is the date of our next meeting, and we have down there December the 21st, just a few days before Christmas. Actually, it's my daughter's birthday. Thank you for reminding me of that. Do we need a motion for the date, David?
Through the chair, I don't believe we do. We previously approved the date a long time ago.
Yep.
And just on that note, through the chair, I just want to make note for the committee that at our next meeting date, we will provide a full draft schedule for 2021. Given that we've been holding these meetings remotely, and it looks like we'll be carrying forward into the next year with holding them remotely, in all likelihood, we'll be suggesting that it would be the last Monday of every month in 2021. But we will provide a draft schedule for consideration, and we would be looking for a motion on that at the next meeting to confirm our dates for next year. So.
Very good. Okay, thanks, David. Okay, so on that note, then for the next meeting in December, then Sean, can you bring in hot chocolate and shortbread cookies? We'll share them remotely.
Is delivery available in that option?
I'll take the liberty of eating them for everybody.
Oh, you're a good man, John.
Virtual.
Okay. All right, I think that's got everything for this meeting. So the last item then is a motion to adjourn. And looking for somebody here, Councillor Hurlick, and a seconder for that motion would be Councillor Agats. And David, you can take the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aitchison, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Hurlick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Agats, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Councillor McKenzie, how do you vote?
I vote yes as well. So that motion is carried. So I guess that's it for today. And thank you very much for everybody's cooperation and discussions that we had.
Hey, Rhonda, I'll give you a call in a little bit. I got a couple